We seem to see increasing refusals across all modes of surveys. So people generally seem to become less willing to participate in surveys. And sometimes that's dramatic for telephone, for instance, where, you know, we're down to 20-30% of the people that actually reply to an invitation. Mail can go down to 10% and even less sometimes. People speculate about different reasons. One could be an overuse of respondents, you know, not only for research purposes, but also for commercial purposes. You're constantly being called by market research agencies that want answers on whether you like the latest product. And we're part of this, you know, and people might become more skeptical towards science, and that's an issue that needs a voice. But interestingly, and that's also quite nicely laid out in the Crosnick piece, and AA course says that as well, we don't seem to see a very strong relationship, or very clear relationship between high response rates and data quality, which is an interesting point, and a point that hasn't really settled in the research community yet. So results that show the least bias have turned out in some cases to come from surveys with less than optimal response rates. Experimental comparisons also have revealed few significant differences between estimates from surveys with low response rates and short period periods, and surveys with high response rates and long period periods. This is a bit surprising, because after what we talked about yesterday, you know, the bigger your sample, the more of your sample you also should be reaching, the better the data quality should be. See again Crosnick for some of those studies that try to figure out whether response rates or non-response bias, as they would call it, matters. And it's very interesting, and they give you a reason why it might not be as important an issue that we all think it is. Anyway, whenever you do a survey, whenever you report findings from a survey, you need to report your response rate, because that gives a reviewer, a reader, a sense of the data and what happened in the data collection. These things get a bit technical now for 2 minutes, and then we're done. These things are important features of estimating response rates. So the response rate itself, the number of complete interviews with reporting units divided by the number of eligible reporting units in the sample. Here? So the number of complete, the number of interviews that we actually gathered, divided by the number of interviews that we tried to get. Cooperation rates, the proportion of all cases interviewed of all eligible units ever contacted. That's not complete interviews. That's anyone who started the interview, who agreed, yes, we can do this. And there might be a big difference between the completed interviews and the started interviews, because we always have dropout in between. Refusal rate, the proportion of all cases in which a housing unit or the respondent refuses to be interviewed or breaks off an interview of all potentially eligible cases. Kind of the reverse in a way. And contact rate, the proportion of all cases in which some responsible housing unit was reached at least. So these are some of the things that we need to compute some of the response rates, and this even goes further. So we have these now, and some of these can be much more specified. Again, I don't think this is the place to do that at length, but the AA4 guidelines, and I have the links in the presentation in a second, are very clear on that. And if you ever need to compute a response rate, turn to them. You know exactly what numbers you need, and you get exactly the formulas that you need to calculate the response rates. So the response rate 1, just to give you a quick example, RR1, and they've got 6 nowadays. Types. Or the minimum response rate is the number of complete interviews divided by the number of interviews, complete plus partial, including the drop-offs, plus the number of non-interviews, refusal and break-off, plus non-context, plus others, plus all cases under 50. So everyone who was in the sample is put below the line here, basically. Whether they could be reached at all, or whether you could even think about reaching them, and so on and so forth, until interviews. So that's a very inclusive one in a way. This one then, here you see the P moving up. This one would also count partially completed interviews into the estimation, response rate 2 in this case. These are only 2 examples because I don't want to bore you with too many formulas. But you see, it's not rocket science. You need these estimates to some degree to compute these. If you do a survey yourself, you should have them anyway. If you're working with a polling agency, you definitely want a report that includes these. These includes the ones that you need for computing the response rate that you want to compute. And you anyone who is you would have drawn in your sample, but you wouldn't have any idea how to contact, where to contact, with what means to contact each other. I don't think it's a category which is very big usually. This is something we negotiate with polling agencies before we give them the assignment actually. Because some of them are not that well trained and might not actually record some of this information. And we had some difficulties with that in the past. So, whenever you get offers from polling agency, tell them that this is what you want, or at least most of these things. Very small here, so there's a couple of links, but you would also find it very easily if you Google AA4, looking at the standard definitions of different response rates, and they have an Excel file, which basically you enter these different things into the Excel file for whatever you want to estimate, and you get the response rate. So you don't even have to do the math. Reporting these response rates and publications, be clear what type of response rate you provide, and I saw that in what you sent me that wasn't the case.
Yeah, because we didn't provide the details. Where we have all these details.
Sometimes you see it, especially the public opinion journals want to see it. If you publish in Public Opinion Quarterly or International Journal of Public Opinion Research, they always require exact reporting of response rates. Other journals are a bit more lenient when it comes to that. Do you actually have all the information? Does the polling firm provide all the information? Again, be aware of that there's an issue. If your response rate is low, consider whether you can test for structural non-response bias, so can you actually compare your sample to real population estimates and see whether there was a bias. Did you for some reason get less women than there are in the population? And is that maybe due to non-response? It's often very difficult to do because you often don't also get the data from the polling agencies. Especially those ones they call but that refuse to answer. It would be nice to have the gender of those people, for instance, which in a telephone interview would be very easy to record, but many don't. They just hang up there and don't enter any data. So it's very hard to estimate this. If your response rate is low, you could also, try to discuss why that isn't an issue for your study. And again, refer to some of the literature on that shows that low response rates are not that problematic really. Are response rates relevant in any way for non-probability samples? We don't see it reported very often, I think. I think it's interesting information to judge what happened in the collection data. You go through your villages and you say every third person I talked to didn't want to talk to me. That's useful information for me to evaluate what happened in the data collection process and maybe speculate a bit about the interpretation of your findings. So you might not be in a situation that you can do these funky formulas and have all the different information, but giving people from non-probability samples a sense of whether a lot of people participated or only very few participated would actually be nice. This is what you sent me, right? Yeah. And since we did this yesterday, I thought very quickly adding this question. Yeah, Terry 4 has the exact definition of that. See, but this is what exactly they've been doing. In the low response rate, the wave one was due to many respondents not agreeing to be contacted again. In the second wave, we interviewed blah, 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 blah. So this could be one way of writing out these
that's the one
things.
point. In a short panel survey, attrition rate might not be as high as compared to long panel survey.
Yeah.
For example, it's already for 6 months. So here it was conducted within a period of 2 months.
Yeah.
So that also explains
High attrition rates, yeah?
low attrition.
Low attrition rates and high response, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, people might remember better that they participated 2 months before and therefore are more willing to engage with it again. These are some of the issues we'll be talking about in the next hour and just for a few more minutes now. Some general issues again. So when we do surveys, we look at open versus closed-ended questions.
And supposedly, because the response is like I have brought a sample which is fairly random.
Yeah.
And it's very representative in a way.
Yeah.
And the diffusion rate is that sample in a way.
Yeah.
So how do we counter that?
That's the big problem. I mean, panel surveys, so one wave here, the next wave here, fewer respondents here than here. Here you've got a great random representative sample, right? Here, a third of the respondents doesn't participate anymore. All you can do is you need to check whether there's any systematic bias in the panel attrition. So do you see that more women dropped out than men? Do you see that low-educated people dropped more often out than high-educated people? And that's what you fairly easily can do, actually, because you know some of the social demographics from the measurements in your first wave. And you see who's left in the second wave. So that's what I would do for as many of those characteristics that you have and that might be relevant to see whether there's systematic dropout, whether it changed the proportion of those characteristics in the second wave. Good question. Quickly, open-ended versus closed-ended questions. Open-ended questions are when you do a survey, and I'm sure you all did this online somewhere, you get a little text field and you're required to type in your own text. The same could be happening in an interview situation on the telephone or face-to-face. With closed-ended questions, you get predefined answers. So you need to cross something, click something on predefined answers. One problem with open-ended questions is that, yeah, you get textual data. That's, in a way, qualitative data that you still need to quantify then. So people are writing things in this text box, and some people write 2 words, and other people write 2 paragraphs, if you don't specify it. And you, from that text, need to extract the information that you're interested in and convert that into numbers again. Codify that, quantify that. So there's an additional step, really, involved in doing so, which is very close to a content analysis, which we're actually going to talk about on Friday. More work, more room for error in a way. You need to do this translation from text data into numbers very well, and make sure that it's reliable, and all of that. So it's something that in mass surveys we don't like to work with, because if you do like 20 questions like that, it's going to be a lot of work to get that into reliable numbers and into reliable estimates. Some advantages of open-ended questions, though. You get greater complexity in your answers. You can give people the room to really engage with your question. You get some information about cognitive processes. You see maybe how much people engage in this. Sometimes they will even tell you how they come to a certain judgment, a certain answer, which could be very interesting for certain research purposes. You get to know about new aspects that you might not have thought about yourself before. When I have to predefine answers, what's the most important issue in this country, and I come up with a list of 20, but I should have had this other issue on the list, and I didn't. That's what open answers could tell you. Take you to the topics. Disadvantages, again, you need to categorize it post hoc, so you have the text data, but you need to turn it into numbers, and that's difficult. Can be a difficult process. you get a great variance in your answers. You might, and variance in terms of quality, but also in terms of content. So again, the person who writes a word versus the person who writes 2 paragraphs, if you don't specify it. That's a great variety, because the 2 paragraphs will most likely contain more information than the 2 words, and help you deal with that feeling. Here we also see that literacy skills are important. So people actually need to be able to write first, but also to be able to express themselves in writing, and to express their thoughts and feelings and attitudes or whatever you're interested in when writing something down, which is not always a given. Closed-ended questions then provide a limited number of concrete and predefined answer options that we then easily turn into numbers, which is really nice for us, because we immediately have the numbers when we do stats and want to translate anything. We often consider questions versus statements, and as we'll see in the many examples that are to follow in the next hour. Sometimes we ask questions with question marks, sometimes we get statements and ask people to rate the statement. Do you agree or disagree with the statement? Do you like or dislike this thing? So these answer options in closed-ended questions are often ratings, like, dislike, agree, disagree, never, always. Rankings, which one of the following do you prefer? Which would we prefer second? Which would be a third preference? That's something easy to do. You can ask choice for alternatives. Party choice is an alternative. You know, which party would you vote if next Sunday? Do you vote on Sundays in India? No. I need to learn a lot.
Yes. We have election on Sunday. We have election on Sunday.
Online maybe, because whenever there is election, holiday will be declared. So people will want it not to be on Sunday. Like in US, Europe.
So you get a free day when there's an election?
Yeah.
There's differences in Europe, though. I mean, most of them are on Sunday, but the Dutch who just vote on Wednesdays, because there's a strong Protestant minority that can't do anything on Sundays, which is related to. So it needs to be on another day. The UK votes on Thursdays, I think. Anyway, party choice. So which party would you vote for in the next election? And there you have to pick an alternative of the ones that are given. Your preferred holiday destination could be another one. You know, it's different types of alternatives here. Then you've got item batteries. Again, we look at examples of all of these later on. So a lot of statements, and to actually statements you have to say whether you agree or disagree. It's often relating to a similar topic. And you've got something which is called a semantic differential, which looks like this. So you have to, how would you judge the teacher of this class? Is he serious or fun? Is he pleasant or unpleasant? Is he formal or casual? Is he expensive or affordable? No, that's not. How did you judge them? Anyway, so this is a classic semantic differential type of question. You've got basically 2 opposing characteristics, and need to scale an object from those 2 opposing characteristics. Rating question, valid country if almost everyone shares the same customs and traditions, agree strongly to disagree strongly. Alternatives, how often do you meet socially with friends, relatives, or work colleagues? Never, less than a month, more than a month. You need to pick one of those alternatives. And this is a multiple item, Likert scale type of battery. Please rate the following statements based on your behavior and your statistics course. My study skills are excellent compared with others in the class. Strongly disagree or strongly agree? And then.
And what's the difference between ratings and multiple items?
It's not. Ratings could look a bit different, whereas Likert scales usually work with disagree or agree, and ratings could be sympathy or favorability, and we look at different examples. But in essence, this is a rating, but a particular type of rating, and these multiple item batteries are very often used if you want to have multiple item measures of similar or related constructs. Again, we look at some of those. Closed-ended questions, quick and simple for response to answer. Literacy and language skills are less problematic. Possible alternatives are provided in the answer options. You tend to get less irrelevant data. The 2 paragraphs text and only a couple of words will be relevant. It's easier to analyze for us. Possible misunderstandings, however, are not captured. The text field is what sense if someone misunderstood the question. If you just put a cross, that's not the case. Complex questions are reduced to a few and simple categories, which is often maybe simplifying the world too much. And sometimes you create frustration on the side of the respondent because the answer option that he or she would prefer is just not given, which is a moment when many people would drop out of the survey. Measurement details, predefined answer. This is a bit more of an extended list of what we saw before. So in the interest of time, I'll just skip over this. This, just to give you a sense that this could also matter, is a comparison of an open-ended and a closed-ended measurement of issue importance. So the question was, what one issue mattered most to you in deciding how you voted for president? Conducted in the States, I believe. So this question was once provided with an open-ended answer category, so there's basically a text field that people could type in an issue, and closed-ended where people would get a list of, I think in this case, around 20 issues. And C, the economy was mentioned in the open-ended version only by 35% of the people, whereas in the closed-ended version it was mentioned by 58% of the people. It's a substantial difference, right? So we do actually see that most of the times the most important problem. Sorry? I think it was a split half sample, I think, yeah. So they had 1,000 people and one half of the 1,000 people got that version and the other half got that version, randomly distributed. There is more research on open versus closed-ended questionnaires. For some, it's very common in the field that I work into. I mean, this most important problem, what's the most important problem the country is facing today is in most surveys that I'm using is an open-ended question. Because it never can be certain that you can list all the possible problems that people find important. So that's one of the classic examples, at least in the field that I work in, of open-ended questions. We'll take a break now, I think, well deserved. If we can make it not too long, because as usual I'm already limited in terms of the time that we have. Yeah.
So can you have some close-ended questions and then lead towards a kind of open-ended answers, like if no, then explain why?
Yeah. That's also what often happens with these issue importance. You give a list of 20 issues and then you say, well, if your issue is not among these, and then there's an open text field. Yeah, that's a good point, actually.
Yes, why?
That could be an option. Yeah. You can mix if you're uncertain that the number of answers that you're giving is comprehensive. You can actually allow for some kind of open answer options, and that's indeed good point, commonly done. Let's maybe try to do 10 minutes and maybe not much more than that.